A very pleasant day to each and everyone tuning in our podcast for today. A podcast where we can get to share and educate one another about the current issues faced by mankind. I am your host, Emmanuel Cadungon, and with me,
Nash, Baguio, and as we put our headphones on and mics up, a change is going to happen here on
Speak as One, Rise as One.
And for this discussion entitled Na Kain Na, Combating Food Insufficiency Inside Filipino Household, we will be tackling an unending condition testing people's ability to improvise, utilize, and finding ways to resolve it, food insufficiency.
Along with our great guest, who will be tackling the background, advocacy, and actions in order to help you, viewers, and those around you experiencing food insecurity. The guests who will be here with us today are Mr. Rommel Christopher Obras, Mr. Justin Kenneth Tampol, Mr. Justin Hans Ceniza, and Miss Angel Khamil Carreon.
So open your eyes, lend us your ears, we are your voice.
But what really is food insufficiency? How does one become food insufficient? Here with us today, our speakers will be tackling this current issue, sharing their experiences and observations to enlighten how this problem affected us locally, nationally, and globally. A virtual round of applause to Mr. Rommel Christopher Obras and Mr. Justin Kenneth Tampol, who are both student advocates for zero hunger in Mindanao.
Hunger, a very common issue, yet is so difficult to combat.
That is right. I always see children roaming around, begging for food and use, talking about stealing from others or doing bad deeds just to feed their starving families.
Same here. Food insufficiency is actually an already existing condition in which households lack access to adequate food because of many factors like extreme poverty, poor governance, lack of institutional support, or environmental crises. An article also from the World Food Program stated that as much as 828 million people are unsure where to get their next meal for the day. How could that many people have insufficient access to food in the world?
That also left me wondering, Mr. Obras. Everyone is affected by food insufficiency, especially those who are weak, in the poverty line, and highly burdened by the unexpected occurrences that led to one having an unstable food supply. Despite our country being rich in resources, people still struggle to find food security. Also, according to the DOST FNRI survey, 62.1% out of 7,717 Filipino households in the Philippines experience moderate to severe food insecurity. And in Mindanao alone, 12.7% of the families here, or roughly 738,000, have experienced hunger.
Those are very high rates, as food insufficiency is gradually becoming a very alarming situation which causes suffering and even death to some. Once again, this issue needs to be solved, if not be lessened, in order to have sufficient food access and supply for all. Mr. Justin Hans Ceniza, as a food security advocate under your local town, how does the government act and do their part in aiding food insufficiency in our country?
Well, Eman, the issue of food hunger in the Philippines is a complex problem influenced by various factors, including current events. To solve these problems, the Philippine government has implemented various laws, activities, and advocacies to resolve the country's food insufficiency. Some examples of the various laws, activities, and advocacies to resolve the country's food insufficiency are the Republic Act No. 11203 or the Rice Certification Law, the National Food Policy, the Philippine Food Security Information System, or also known as PhilFSIS, and many more. These laws, activities, and advocacies show the Philippine government's commitment to addressing food insufficiency and promoting sustainable food production and distribution in the country. And most importantly, the Philippine government has also partnered with the UN in achieving the goals of its SDG through integrating these goals in the Philippine Development Plan in the years 2017 to 2022, as well as in the various sectoral development plans in the country.
Those are indeed helpful projects to combat food insecurity in our country. Kudos to the government's successful implementation.
As mentioned earlier, the Philippines has been a supporter of the UN SDGs. Accompanied here with us today by a representative from the United Nations in Zero Hunger Advocacy, Ms. Angel Khamil Carreon. She will discuss what this movement advocates and how it still affects the ongoing food insufficiency not only in our country but in the world.
Thank you for having me here. To start off, the United Nations Sustainable Development Programs are our hope to achieve a balanced development, aiming for social, economic, and environmental sustainability. As defined by the UNDP, the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, also known as the Global Goals, were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. In line with the topic discussed today, one of its SDGs that we are pointing out is SDG 2 Zero Hunger. This goal wishes to end or to build a world that is free of hunger by 2030 with a tagline being End Hunger, Achieve Food Security, and Improve Nutrition and Promote Sustainable Agriculture.
As the Philippine government partnered with the United Nations to achieve such goals in development for the country, what were their first steps in achieving food security?
In the Philippine context, the Philippine government started this united development through constructing targets to serve as the nation's guide in combating food insufficiency by 2030. Some of these targets include Target 2.1, which is by 2030 end hunger and ensure access by all people to nutritious and sufficient food all year round, and Target 2.2, which is by 2030 end all forms of malnutrition, including achieving by 2025 the internationally agreed targets on stunting and wasting in children under 5 years of age, and address the nutritional needs of adolescent girls, pregnant, and lactating women and older persons. Through these targets and many more others, the government was able to implement and inspire each region to start their own practices in achieving zero hunger. These include Region 3, which they implement Farmer Field School, which educates small-scale food producers on how to solve production problems, and the Mimaripo region, having Sustainable Livelihood Programs, or SLPs, Zero Hunger, under the Department of Social Welfare and Development, which successfully conducted a 4-day SLP Zero Hunger Implementation Assessment webinars.
How about in Mindanao? Were there any projects pushed for a zero hunger community?
Of course, Nash. Some of these include the Mindanao Sanitation and Food Security Project, which is a project that provided low-cost, durable, and scientific sanitation hardware and food security support through giving root crops and vegetable production for very poor, vulnerable families in selected target areas in Mindanao. There were also school-based feeding programs implemented, food banks and food pantries put up in order to provide food for those in need here in our region.
Oh, these are very good projects and practices that will surely promote zero hunger in our country. The UN's implementations of this SDG truly promotes the development not only of one country but of all countries in the world.
As we now know the history, effects, and actions made because of this food insufficiency issue, let us bring back our speakers, Mr. Obras and Mr. Tampol, as they speak about their insight about the issue in this present context.
Food insufficiency truly is a crucial issue in our country. Though the government has implemented a program that gives cash to the poorest of the poor in an effort to reduce hunger, the situation still has not improved, not only in Davao, but throughout the Philippines as a whole. Despite the receiving assistance from the government, but with the still prevailing factors that causes insufficiency to consuming households, insecurity will still be common. There is no such thing as enough in the end. It may be good now, but it won't be good enough afterwards.
That is true. This is a major global issue that affects millions of people, particularly those in low-income and developing countries. The UN SDG will surely help us battle food insufficiency by addressing the root causes of malnutrition. The UN SDG can help improve the health and well-being of individuals, especially children and women, and reduce the prevalence of undernourishment. By cutting down on food waste, assisting our neighborhood food banks and pantries, and educating ourselves and others about the problem, we can also make a difference in our day-to-day lives. We can ensure that no one goes hungry and that everyone has access to food by taking immediate action. Together, let's create a future where food insufficiency is unheard of. So, join the movement today and take action. Together, we can change things.
Hunger knows no age, race, gender, and ethnicity. Everyone is affected and everyone is trying their best to resolve this issue. To our viewers, have you been food insufficient? What were your personal ways to combat hunger? In this part of our discussion, Mr. Ceniza will be back to share his personal tips and tricks in combating food insufficiency inside your households.
Hello everyone. Here are some tips and tricks that you could use in combating food insufficiency. One tip that I can share with you is to know how to rationalize the available food in your household. In doing this, we can divide the available food that you have in your household to make sure the available food in your household will last for a longer time than usual. Another tip that I can share with you all is to know budgeting. In budgeting, you are only buying the necessities and not unnecessary things to make sure that you have enough budget for buying the food that you need.
Wow! Those are some really useful tips and tricks in combating food insufficiency inside your households.
That's true, Eman, but before we end this discussion, I have some concluding questions for our guest speakers. Here are some. What inspired you to get involved in promoting zero hunger and food security? And also, what advice would you give to individuals who want to get involved in promoting zero hunger and food security in their own communities?
Personally, I advocate for this because I want change. I would suggest that the government should improve the food distribution systems, support small-scale food enterprises, and promote nutrition education on behalf of those struggling voiceless. As a person created by God with a mind to decide right and conscience to do good, I would like to inspire others to have a united community, aiming for one goal, as that is our role as a society. Through this cooperation we build, the faster we will achieve development.
Thank you, Mr. Ceniza, for those very inspiring words and helpful ideas.
Ending our discussion, Ms. Carreon for the concluding remarks.
Summarizing this whole discussion, food insufficiency is a very serious matter affecting all. It doesn't choose who it will affect, when it will target you, and how it will start. With the continuous rise and high rates of hunger and food insufficiency seen in various news in the television, or you can easily observe outside and in the streets, not only in our households but in the country and in the world, the government, the United Nations, and all the people rose and united to seek solutions, just wishing to combat this highly burdening problem that brought us more struggles in our daily lives. With this issue, all efforts were recognized and we are now close to combating food insufficiency because of the awareness and compassion towards others that people practice. So, Open your eyes and come along with this movement. We'll combat this fight together.
And that sums up our whole discussion. Again, I would like to thank the speakers, the guests, and my co-host for making this podcast possible. In the end, as part of the citizens in this country, we should play our part and do our responsibilities to help one another and end hunger. That is all, and thank you.